Welcome to class everyone with Kisuke Urahara, where we are going to learn Bankai? That would be cool, right? If you would want to have a Bankai, what kind of Bankai would you like to have? Let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, back to class. We're going to learn about stats today. Stats and set stamp, and why it's important to understand both so that you can be better at building your own set stamps and being more resourceful and more mindful about your set stamps and what kind of set stamps to use. Before we dive into it though, I want to say this. The stats window here is wrong. It's correct, but it's wrong. Weapon stats and core stamps are not incorporated. Set stamp boni are incorporated, okay? You can see this here. I have 24.2% crit rate. If I take out my weapon, which has 30% crit rate, not a cent. What am I clicking here? Let's remove this. I'm not going into negatives, right? I'm still at 24.2%. Let me put this back on before I forget. And the same can be said as a second example for Gin. And for Gin, it's especially important. 157% ailment damage bonus. I gain 20% of ailment damage bonus through his core stamp. If I remove this, as you will see, 157. Okay? Now I do the same thing, but with a core stamp. With the set stamp, not the core stamp, sorry. The set stamp gives me 50%. I will remove this. I don't have any ailment here. I have ailment here, right? I will remove this. And as you can see, decrease in ailment damage. Not only the 50%, but the 38 point something two, right? Let me put this back on. Before I forget, there you go. Now, if you have a feeling that I'm rushed, I'm not. I'm just trying to establish a baseline because there is a lot to talk about and I don't want to make another hour-long video about this kind of stuff, but I want to give you the most information possible, as compact as possible, okay? If you have any questions about this, if you need follow-up videos, let me know in the comments down below. I'm more than happy, I should say, to do follow-up videos. I'm not going to incorporate any hard theory crafting into this. I'm not going to incorporate any kind of min-maxing into this. This is just for a baseline. Because when I go into character guides, then I have to refer back to this, to the stats. And this is a great baseline to have. Okay. Why are stats important? Stats are important because they are based upon your ability to deal damage and your ability to stay alive and your ability to enhance a kit, right? So let's start with basic stats. And here it's really important to understand that this window here, this basic stats window, is the same as this here. This means my attack here is the same attack that will be used to calculate this part of the damage here. In general, without going too deep into theory crafting, damage here works multiplicatively, which means you have damage buckets, like for example, type damage, right? You have different types of damages, and you have all damage bonus, and they are a damage bucket. So if you have 30% damage bonus from Eisen, which has all damage here, and you have 20% damage bonus from Thrust here, it's 50% damage bonus multiplicatively to what you have as a base attack, okay? This is important to understand because these damage buckets are like the cornerstone of building. Because, for example, this ailment damage bonus is a specific type of damage. This is not incorporated in the same bonus here. This is calculated separately, which is really, really important to understand. This is why we want to stack as much damage bonuses as we can. Different damage bonuses too, right? That said, that's a part for theory crafting. That's a part of deep diving into min-maxing, which we are not going to do here. Just as a side note, damage is calculated multiplicatively, and this is important to know because it's important for crit rate and crit damage too. Now, defense is technically speaking something that you shouldn't worry about when it comes to your character, when it comes to building your own character. You should worry about it when it comes to the enemy though. If we take his technique as an example, Aizen's techniques that is, we're going to check here. You will see level 100 is 208k, right? If I go down to level 5 and do the same thing again, you will see that the damage is way higher. Okay, this could have been a fluke, this could have been a crit, right? Let's redo this. Still higher. Okay, wait. Atro. Oh, I missed completely. Let's redo it once more, just to showcase this again. 290. Okay. So this is true. Defense is higher the higher the level of the enemy that is. Yes, it is. What also is true is that your attack is capped in a certain way, right? Because your stats are capped at a certain level. At level 90, for example, I'm doing less damage, in general speaking, than I do at level 100. You can see here, 115. I will redo this one more time. This is just to showcase how defense works. Because it's quite important when it comes to defense lowering effects. We don't have them yet in the game, in a certain aspect. We will have them later on. Now I will take level 90. It's very similar in performance, but there are slight differences here, as you can see, right? Let's redo it once more. Even just 10% difference in one technique can mean a 10% difference when you fight bosses, for example. So this is why you see such large variance once you reach higher brackets and the level of your character stays the same, but the enemy level increases. This is also why, for example, when you have fights like in Void and Destruction, and you have to decide what kind of perks to take, these extra levels hamper your ability to deal damage by quite a big margin. And this 15% here could be less valuable, for example, than, let's say, the Grimjaw perk here for 10%, right? Because with this, for example, you can still reach good values and you can adapt to the level increase. Now you know that defense is increased by higher levels. If you need to reach 1 million, for example, 1 million points as a free-to-play and you don't have the characters, increasing the enemy level will make it much harder for you to reach that 1 million if it's based on damage, okay? So, that's where defense is important, right? Now, crit rate and crit damage, there is a really easy way to calculate what rate or what kind of stamp, what kind of crit ratio is most beneficial for you. You just multiply this part with this part here. And if the number at the end, if the result is higher, you can say that it's quote unquote a DPS value, okay? And if the value of the second set is higher, this means that the crit rate and crit damage that you have on that set is valued as a higher DPS and you should equip that one. Rule of thumb, this is very laymanish speaking, right? If you don't want to involve yourself into too much theory crafting. For those who want to go into theory crafting, generally speaking, a great breakpoint to achieve 1 ratio to 2 ratio, like 1% crit rate to 2% crit damage, is above 30%. That's the easiest and most notable way when you get more out of crit damage, right? And the higher you go in crit rate, the more you need crit damage. General rule, okay? To simplify all of this for yourself, you either do the calculations by multiplying these two values together and see the DPS number at the end, or you go by 1 to 2. For every single crit rate that you have, percentage crit rate, you get 2% crit damage, okay? If it's off, it's not that bad, by the way. It's not about min-maxing, it's about getting a baseline, okay? Now, healing effect, healed effect is something that we don't have. Well, we have it in Orihime's kit. Oh yeah, let me talk about HP real quick. There is one example where HP is really important, and this is if you build up Orihime as a healer, because her baseline healing is based on her max HP, okay? And the second part, which is important, is for Sajan. I have not built him yet, so I'm not going to talk about his damage potential, but if you're going to use him as a quote-unquote support with his shield, because he has a passive, I think, Yes, here. As long as the shield is active, crit rate is increased. Which means that if you don't have him built, if you don't have a lot of max HP and you're going into difficult content, his shield can be destroyed by 2 attacks. Okay, and we don't want that. We don't want to lose 15% crit rate. So if you're going to build him as a semi-support, as an offensive support, maybe you want to consider adding some max HP into his kit to help you getting the full benefit of his shield. Okay? And that's basically it about HP. Back to the stats. That's healing effect. Heal effect is something that you will see in Adventure 2, where you have certain cards which give you increased effects on this type of things. Same thing for cooldown reduction. We don't have that in the game. And even though I would like for ultimate charge rate to decrease cooldown reduction on ultimates, we don't have a cooldown reduction system right now except for Adventure mode. Dissipation damage bonus is always the same. Same thing here, it's in here for the Adventure mode, in Adventure mode, and you have certain challenges which increase this effect here. No brainer, we don't have any effects increasing that for the moment. Ultimate charge rate. Ultimate charge rate is, generally speaking, not that great of a value. You want to have it maybe in a set stamp, in a substat here. That would be nice. But as a main piece here in the basic stats, it's usually a wasted stat. The few characters who really benefit from it is Bankai Ichigo, right? As you can see here, I'm at 180 nearly, because he really needs the ultimate to do damage, else he will suffer quite a lot. But generally speaking, the best way to find out if you need cooldown reduction on your ultimate charge rate, I shouldn't say cooldown reduction, an increased ultimate charge rate, is to see if the damage comes from the ultimate. Jump into trainings mode, do a full rotation without any set stamps, without anything, and look at what damage your character is doing, right? If, for example, you're using Toshiro and you feel like his rotation with Aizen is just not there yet, you are getting his ultimate just outside of Kyoka Soigetsu, for example, then you want some ultimate charge rate in him, usually around the 20%, 25%, so that you get his Bankai during the second round of ultimate of Kyoka Soigetsu, right? One of the main reasons, for example, I have ultimate charge rate with him is exactly that, because he's able to get his ultimate charge rate down with 50% to a point where he can chain them as soon as it comes off cooldown. And the ultimate is so strong that you want to be in ultimate as much as possible. So when you are looking at ultimate charge rate, for example, this is a perfect example. He doesn't have any, because the natural way that you build his ultimate needs to be in a way that you're going to use him as an off-field character, right? But at the same time, because his ultimate is giving you benefits, like for example, putting up another instance of thrust resistance down, you want to use Gin's ultimate inside of his ultimate. So if what you're going to use ultimate charge rate for is to tune two different ultimates to each other so that you can stack them. That's the way I see ultimate charge rate. And if I'm not using this, for example, that's because maybe I have to delay it for a boss fight, maybe I have to delay this for min-maxing damage in a certain aspect, right? Then this damage bonus is mostly gotten by either passive effects, stamps effects, or you can get them from the level 30 here, for example. No, I think it's here. Yeah, here it is, for example. Special attack increases here, for example. So, not something that you have to worry about. You either get it or you don't. And the slash damage bonus or the type damage bonuses, they are basically on the sets, or same way you don't have to think about building for them, right? Which leads us into set stamps. Set stamps are crucial. They are always built the same. No matter which set stamp that you take, every single piece is built the same. Every single piece can roll with all the three basic stats. In flat stats, do I even have one here? Yes, in flat stats, or in percentage stats, like have you seen here. Here, here. There you go. And this is important because when you are going to farm set stamps, you have to be mindful that you have a 1 in 6 chance, if you're looking for attack percentage, to get it per piece. And then it's not true, by the way. It's not 1 in 6. It's lower because now on the first set stamp here on the left piece, I call this left piece or the number 1 piece, you get all damage type bonuses too. In specific categories, right? You get thrust, you get spirit, you get slash, and so forth and so on. That bonus damage can only drop here. Now, you have all seen online the discourse about attack versus damage type bonuses. My take on this is fairly simple. If the substats are fantastic, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter. Before we go into set stamps, you have to ask yourself this. And this is a question that you have always to have yourself before you do anything related to spending resources. Will it help you achieve a higher reward tier? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Let's say, for example, you're top 50, right? And you're missing, I don't know, 1 million points to get into top 30 consistently. And you see that your characters are lacking set stamps or lacking stats or whatever. Is it worth spending 3 days worth of leveling up a character to the next bracket? Is it worth it to go for the set stamp, to increase your set stamps, yes or no? Because if you're going only into the 30% bracket here, but you're not going to improve your damage overall in other aspects of the game, like the co-op challenge, for example, where your reward structure is different because you need to be in the top 20, then is it really, really worth getting into it? And the major point that you have to concern yourself with is only the weekly score. And that's my personal take about this. Because your weekly score, reaching this top here, will alleviate for any kind of brackets loss that you have. I mean, you get 100 jade here. That's the only thing that you have to care about. If we are being frank here, because if you're looking at the rewards here, I will repeat myself to death with this, by the way. You get 50 of these Koban coins more, and that on a weekly. So how long does it take for you to get to the next bracket, you know? And how much of an investment you have to put in there to get to the next bracket. And that's something that you have to be conscious about. Trial of Tower, for example. I'm doing my Tower of Trial at Trial of Tower with a Yoroichi who is at 30k. Because yes, of course, I have an Aizen, but his damage is hampered by quite a bit, by 80% actually. So she's my main carry, but do I really need to invest so much into her a week from the next maybe strike character or a month out from the next strike character? I'm not getting anything here. I'm getting first time rewards, yes, but what are these? 20 jade? And maybe a chance for a golden stamp? Is that really worth the effort, or do you want to get there naturally? And that's what is important to ask yourself and see your account for what it is and to see where your account needs to go, okay? Why is this important? It's important because I will take my Aizen here as an example, and I call this trickle-down modding, right? It doesn't matter if it's in this game, it doesn't matter if it's in another game. If you have mods, artifact, gearing systems, what you want to do as a free-to-play and as a low spender is limit the wasteful resources that you need to bring a character up. My Aizen, we can all agree, no matter what investment you have in Aizen, he's amazing, right? Now the question is, do I really need his immeasurable gap? And what I mean by this is this. If I only get 10% more damage out of this, is it really worth it? Who am I competing against? I'm not competing against anybody except the damage brackets I am in. But if I'm a low spender, if I'm, for example, not using, if I'm just B1ing every single character, that's my cap, right? I don't have to compare myself with somebody who has spent money and has a B6, for example. So the 10% damage increase that you get, for example, that's not true by the way, but the 10% damage increase that you would get by using, for example, Gin's stamp here on Tozen, but if this stamp has ailment damage, I can only trickle it down to the next character, which is a battlefield character who has ailment damage. Meanwhile, Inner Fang is performing slightly lower, but it's still giving me battlefield skill damage. It's still providing damage enough to compensate for the fact that I don't have to waste resources on a second set, right? And that's really important, because when it comes to set performances, stats matter more than this part here. A lot more. If your stats are whack, your damage will be whack too. Because you don't care about 16% attack base increase if your attack is just flat overall and you don't have... What kind of 16% do you get out of 42 attack here? Nothing. You get nothing at all. It's just a waste of resources and a waste of a stamp, right? And this is why this is not so much of a guide of what to use, but how to use stuff. Inner Fang can be used on any character. I can trickle this down to the next one. I can trickle this down to Sajin. That's why I'm not building anything on him. Because if I'm going to look for a certain stamp, set stamp, for Tozen, I can trickle this down. And then, if you're talking about replacing this, if I'm going into Mocking Visage, for example, and I want to replace this part here, just as an example, this part here needs to be level 30, or it needs to be equivalent to my current one. My current one is level 25. If I go over this one, for example, it needs to be equivalent to this part here, and it needs to be equivalent to this part here. So I need another piece which has attack percentage, which has crit rate, which has crit damage, and hits on those too. And then I need to level it up to level 30 again. Because I'm not going to destruct this. I'm going to give this to somebody else. And this is really important to understand, okay? Because, yes, maybe Immeasurable Gap is the best in slot if you play double DPS or whatever. But for example, depending on your use of the character, and I will go with Tozen with this, because this is also kind of a appetizer for the guide. Marketing, yes. His Inner Fang, when you do damage with him, a lot of his damage is on the battlefield skill. When you pop his battlefield skill, what is being used? He's using the wounds that you have, or the bleed. I will count it bleed because I think I cannot say wounds for too long. When he plops his bleeds on the target, this bleed explode under the battlefield skill. It is ailment damage it's getting exploded, but it's from the battlefield skill. So Inner Fang, even though if you change over to his set stamp, the damage profile shifts over to his ultimate, shifts over to ailment damage, Inner Fang is still providing a lot of damage. So I have to exchange this part here 1-to-1. And the same can be said for Aizen. This battlefield skill sets here, I can give this to Byakuya, I can give this to maybe not Sajin in a way that he can benefit from this part here, but I can trickle this down to another character. If I have Immeasurable Gap, he has spirit damage here. Which future character can benefit from this? It needs to be spirit damage, because else the 2-piece is just dead. Even if I have fantastic stats on this part here and I can give it to the next character, but I'm still losing out because I still need to farm up another set, because spirit damage is just not there. And not only that, his Immeasurable Gap works based on counters, and yes, it works even without the Aizen mechanic because it's for 10 seconds, right? But how often do you counter in a fight? That this part is relevant. And another thing is the increase of all damage types here, as we are going to scale up and scale up and scale up and get more and more support, this 10% will be less and less and less valuable. Okay? When it comes to set, keep it simple. When it comes to farming, keep it simple. Ask yourself, do you need to min-max the character? Yes or no? Let's take my Ichigo, for example. He's my full assault. He needs to be at his peak. He needs to be able to get a high crit rate because he has a passive in here. And this is also an important part when you look at set stamps. What is, again, go into training, do a full rotation naked as the character is, and look at what the damage profile is telling you, okay? If you have a character like Ichigo, for example, who needs ultimate charge rate, you will see it very clearly very soon when his ultimate damage is triple the damage that it does in outside of the ultimate, right? For his case, for example, he wants crit rate because once he exceeds it, he converts it into crit damage. Okay, so we have to push crit rate really hard. Which means in this middle piece, we want to have crit rate here, because he converts this into crit damage once you reach 100%. If you can reach the soft cap of 100% without having to invest crit rate in here, you can switch this to crit damage. And this is true for every character, by the way. Tozen doesn't have innate abilities to benefit from crit. Hold on, listen. This doesn't mean that he doesn't crit. I'm just saying he doesn't have anything in his kit that benefits from crit rate in itself, which means you can increase his crit rate and this will benefit his damage overall because Ailman can crit, his ultimate can crit, and everything else can crit, right? But he doesn't have something to convert it. So it's fine to park him at 60, 50, 40% crit rate, whatever you have, and then put crit damage into this, right? So for example, this piece here, if I get anything better than this, then of course I can change this to crit damage and I have crit rate in his kit here. And it will improve his damage, right? Just something to keep in mind. Generally speaking, when you are looking at set stamps, what you have to do is go into Realm of Mutation. This is a fantastic addition. No doubts about it. If you need to farm specific ones, this is a fantastic addition, right? But you have a strike team. It's not bad to farm Kiski's piece because every single support will be able to use this. Every single support coming out will be able to use this and will be able to equip this. And because it's a support piece, you don't have to be min-maxy about the stats on it either, right? So what you're going to do is, if you have to farm this stamp here, farm it in here, because at the same time you're farming for your future supports too. Because the chance that you get the Yorichi one here is higher, yes, but you also get other pieces that you may not need. Why do you need the Ikaku one, for example? That's what I got. I was farming and then one day I got the Ikaku one, then one day I got the Bankai one, the Ichigo one, and I don't need those, right? If you have to farm for Bankai specific stuff, for Bankai Ichigo stuff, for example, for the slash stamp here, Renji's stamp is not needed. Where are you going to use this? You're never going to use this, right? So you go in here and you farm it specifically. Sorry. Right? So this is how you approach farming, this is how you approach being resourceful about your stats, about your stat stamps. And this is how you should think about building your stuff. Your best characters get the best stamps that you have. But even in this case, my Kiske here, I don't need to level this up. SR stamps, epic stamps, purple stamps, all the same, different names, cap at level 20. They already have lower base stats, right? That's such a shame that I cannot filter by stats. Give me a second. Give me 1 second, I have to find attack here. No, you're not level 1. Where is attack? Give me attack! I need a no attack here, either. Can I find an attack one? I cannot. They are all leveled up. I'm sorry. I tried. But anyways, take my word for it. Not only do you have one more substat on the SSRs, these are basically food. These are low level stuff that you can equip, but I wouldn't invest over level 10 to be honest. Especially because the damage in the lower levels it doesn't matter too much, you will level out fairly quickly out of it. As soon as you can get SSRs, that's all you have to invest into, okay? Now, to finish the video, to finish this class, let me tell you this. If you get crit rate and crit damage on any piece, it doesn't matter what you have here. Bring them to level 10. The enhancement from level 10 to level 15. This is already leveled up. This is already leveled up too. Crap! Okay, I will waste this just for you guys. The investment that you need is fairly low, right? We need 15k cons, sorry, not cons. Cons is the character. And we need 30 ectoplasm. We can hit it once. And then if it hits, for example, like this crit damage here. Fantastic. Which means, oh, suddenly this one becomes viable, right? Because I have crit damage here. I would like to have crit rate, but I don't have this. So we level it up to level 15. Why? Because you still increase the base stats in here. Especially true for the one piece here. If you get okay rolls on your one piece, increase their stats. Even just for one. And if it's HP or if it's ailment damage bonus and you don't need it, whatever the case might be, then you stop there. But at least you have increased the damage a little bit and you have increased the base attack a little bit, and this helps you push forward, right? Because the next stamp that you increase will be level 20, and the next stamp, if that's even better, will be level 25. And this is how you increase your power over time and in a mindful and resourceful way. Because like I said, level, it doesn't seem important, but it is. Especially once you reach the bracket where you have to have 3 teams, okay? If this was helpful to you, drop me a like, drop me a sub, and again, let me know your favorite Bankai down in the comment below, and if you had one, which one would you like to have? See you in the next video. Bye.